What's up, brothers and sisters? It's your brother G World 7_D. Here's the book. Here's a book called The Culture and Technology of African Iron Production. Alright, and I'm going to turn to page 2. I believe it's 247. Yeah, 247. Right here you see African inventions and achievements in furious metallurgy. Okay, recent claims for African achievement in this area of technology include the following. Preheat blast, an invention of enormous importance to the Industrial Revolution, was first employed in Africa, possibly as early as the late 1st millennium BC. African ironworkers developed a method of making steel, the African direct steel process, that was distinct from steel making development elsewhere. African iron and steel were often superior quality to those imported from Europe. Natural draft smelting furnaces, those that operate without bellows or equivalent devices, are an African invention. 5. African smelting may have been independently invented in Africa. Now we're going to stop right there. I mentioned before how the civilizations Maya came from the Americas and went to Egypt, and as he came from across the waters, Maya was dressed up as an Egyptian. He was the spiritual priest. He was the person who documented things. Maya was also a wet nurse, but Maya was a high dignitary that came from across the waters to Egypt, and they gave Maya a tomb talking about the importance of Maya. But in previous posts, I talked about how in these mounds they were smelting iron. They were smelting iron and creating a form of strong type of substance to blast and to cut into rock. Alright, this is what they did. They had their technology and they used that iron to carve into rock. I mentioned that before in other videos, but this book right here talks about Africa, particularly Tanzania, where they had those smelting furnaces, and they're able to create different forms of iron, and that was done here in the Americas. Your black ancestors had a high form of technology. They had a high form of science here in the Americas. And the dating of the Americas, or the years in the Americas, is much older than what they tell you. Like I was talking about how supposedly 7,000 years ago, the Miami Circle is actually older than that. But that's most of these white scholars would give you a little goofy, a later date, because of the further you push it back, it just tell you how old we are, how long we've been here in the Americas, as well all over the world. The smelting iron process, like I said, brothers and sisters was using that globally, and they were structuring and building things, carving in rock all through the Americas. They didn't use no copper tools. And these scientists keep pushing that copper tools. That's why they found those copper tools. That's all they see is copper tools. That is ridiculous, man. It'll be impossible for them to do copper tools to break into all that, man. They'll be breaking their back using copper tools. They use iron, man. Various different form of steel to smash into that rock. And I believe they had ancient machinery that helped to blast into that rock, to drill into that rock. And it was a great effort, a great building effort that these black folks did to build these great structures globally. But you see this in every continent, how they carved into rock, and the precisions of the cut that they did into this rock, like the facial features that you see of the black people in Angkor Wat, the facial features that you see on the Omeki heads, Omeki-chi, Malinchi, Omeki-chi heads, how you see the facial features are precise. Even the ones in Canada, it was precise, but a lot of that has deteriorated, and it's been basically ignored by the scientific community. These individuals do not talk about this. This information is suppressed because you're not supposed to know this. So when you hear people like Garfield, Jabari, Ankh, and those clowns from Amara Squad, they are very ignorant. And it's sad. They've been highly indoctrinated with lies because they don't believe what our people did in the past. They just talk about ancient Egypt and they fantasize or romanticize about ancient Egypt, but they don't sit there and tell you that Egypt didn't just pop up out of nowhere. Egypt inherited greatness coming from something that was older. All right, Egypt just didn't pop out of nowhere. But see, when you start talking about the older civilization, and then that a lot of it here was in America, then we get in a problem because that's not the standard educational system that we've been taught. We have been just taught that Egypt pop out of nowhere, and we have no relationship to Egypt because our ancestors came from West Africa, which is a lie. All right. I continue to do the research, and I continue to get books for references. And then a lot of times these books, you get these white scholars who sit there and write this old crazy stuff, but then when you start doing your own research, you start using common sense. Okay, that don't make any sense, man. Why would these dudes in remote Africa be just making iron and they just doing some goofy religious purposes, man? Some religious ritual, man. No, man. They, brothers and sisters, was smelting iron and creating furnaces here in the Americas, man. And I mentioned before in previous videos how they will sail up and down the various different riverbeds or the river streams that were here in the Americas. And what I mean by that is that many times in the wintertime, some may go south, or in the wintertime they may stay in a particular mound or structure they had. And they had, like I said, furnaces, not only to smelt iron, but to keep them warm during the wintertime. So they had a form of ancient heating system. This is how highly sophisticated our ancestors were. They had a form of ancient heating system and cooling system. So that's why I always harp on talk about the Malay and these names and these structures, how similar they are globally, because they're carving into rock. Right, that mess you see in the History Channel, man. I used to watch History Channel for years. These out and out lies. That doesn't add up. All right, I've been studying stuff for years. Like I said, I have educators in my family. I started listening to Coast to Coast in 1991 when Art Bell was the host. All right, and they had some good stuff in there because the majority of stuff is about black history, but they had a bunch of white people there. And I don't remember Art Bell having any black person on there. He might have had the brother from the astrophysicist. I forgot that guy's name. Who's the most famous one? Black guy out east. Damn, I forgot his name. I knew the brother's name. Tip of my tongue. But he has a show that was on Fox, but he might appear in there, but I doubt it because all Art Bell had was white people. Then there was another host came on there. Then George Norrie been on there. And George Norrie actually turned out to be the best host. Alright? He's actually the best host of Coast to Coast. So I've been listening to Coast to Coast in 1991. Art Bell, and the other guy took over. I forgot his name. Then Art Bell came back temporarily. Then George Norrie took over. And then it was Art Bell tried to create another show on another XM station. And then I think that show stopped running. And Art Bell died a few years ago. Yeah. And then all they do was with Art Bell's show, everything was a conspiracy. And then they made, aliens supposedly building them damn pyramids, which it didn't. The difference from George Norrie is that George Norrie have had black people on there. He had numerous of black people on there compared to Art Bell on the show. So He had some Moorish brothers on there. He had several black astrophysicists on there, and other black people who talked about history. But Art Bell never had that on the show. But I've been listening to Coast to Coast since '91. I think the show was out probably since '88 or something. 80, 88. I want to say '88. That one I'm not totally sure on, but I know I started listening to it in '91 on WLS Chicago overnight, because it came on overnight before the Don Wade and Roma show from midnight to 4. Or no, midnight to 5, because they'll run the first hour again before the Don Wade and Roma show came on. And then, WLS eventually ended up having these conservative buffoons on this show, on the station overnight. And then Coast to Coast was cut. And then I ended up getting XM in I want to say 2010. I got the boombox and a little radio. And so I started listening to XM radio, consistent basis around 20, with the boombox, and a little miniature radio, which I need to update. Around 2010, 2009, 2010. It wasn't 2011, but it was around 2009, 2009. It was 2009 that I had the little radio in the boombox. And I got it from XM because I was studying about it a few years earlier, about satellite radio and where it was going. Excuse me, and where it was going. So I want to emphasize that. Study various different disciplines. Study iron smelting. And then that will kind of give you the linkage to how they cut into the rock, how they structured a lot of these little these monuments that you see around the world. They use iron, but they have furnaces to create that iron. All right. So this is nothing new. This is old information. But you're not taught this because you're basically just given a lie. And then sometimes in these books, one page give you the truth, and then the other 90 pages give you much of a lie. Excuse me. So this is just information that you can use. Our ancestors had a high science mindset. Alright. And they built structures globally. You see mound structures or pyramid structures in Louisiana, Mississippi. Alright, West Florida. You find all that stuff in the South. You have Cahokia here in southern in Illinois, southern part of Illinois, near close to the St. Louis area. You have all these different structures. Remember before I said there was plenty of different so-called mounds. There's over 1 million of them that were here. Now at least I know it's around 200,000 at least that's still around. But you had mounds that were found here, earth-built structures that were found here, even in the city of Chicago. In certain areas of Chicago, they're all over. Our ancestors built this all over. So the idea that you were brought over in a slave ship, that is inaccurate information. That is totally inaccurate information. And we're going to have to stop that. Iron smelting was done to have that hard, strong substance to blast into and to bang into that rock. And this is something he more like use other material, but I said I'm focused on this iron stuff, man, to cut and to carve into rock, because it was constantly building into natural geological rock. I subscribe to a journal called Earth Magazine. They no longer, I think they ended their publication like a year or 2 years ago. Earth Magazine. That's a good geological journal. If you can get some of their back issues, that'd be good. So that's a good reference that you can use, basically like certain geological structures that were here in the Americas, especially North America. But that's good information. But I'm just showing you how this book talks about the very different furnaces. This is in Africa, all right? a culture and technology of African iron production. But you had that technology here in America, smelting of furnaces, iron smelting. Just like the little dwarf who made Thor's hammer. He smelted it. So this is our history, man. We need to fully grasp and pull and take our true history. Do not buy into that Jabari, that old what's that little the Jamaican midget, um, Garfield. These unfortunately foreigners, and not all brothers and sisters who are foreign extraction think this way. Thank goodness many of them know the truth, and many of them refuse to buy into this buck dancing, we just slave type of narrative, man. We was Egypt, and then we became slaves, and then we shipped here. We didn't have the intellectual fortitude to sail around the world. We didn't have the navigation skills to sail around the world. We had to have a white man put it on the bottom of his damn slave ship. That's ridiculous, man. But some of these Negroes actually were still pushing that at the Ivy League institutions, built by slaves, stolen from land from black aboriginals. Stole black aboriginal land and used black slaves to build it. So, hey man, whatever, man. I'm gonna let you know this, man. We're gonna constantly have to do the serious research. The information's there. It is really there, but you're gonna have to want to seek it and get it. Alright? You're gonna have to want to seek it and get this information. Because if you don't do this, you're gonna continue to be lost and ignorant to your true history. Now, whenever you study stuff, every time you see a black person, it's going to be called African. That's they make you foreign. If you're a black person and you have your black features in the Philippines, you're just African. Or Australian, or they African. It's just, you're making these brothers and sisters foreign in their own land where they're aboriginal to their land. But this is the type of mindset that you get. In the so-called black population in Americas, our physical features are very diverse if you really pay attention to it. Some people just say, oh, they're just black. You look at us physically, our features are very diverse. So we have very diverse backgrounds coming from various different black groups who are already here. And my video ended abruptly. I want to finish saying is that the fact you had that feather, I mentioned the feather on the Ghan dancers in India, the feather of Ma'at, and you seen that feather on that Chickasaw brother in that book I showed you. And it's all on the back of their head. The feather on the sister, the feather of Ma'at, the feather of the Chickasaw Indian, man. As you see, that was some similarity. That was Asia, Africa, and Americas, because they were always in tune. They was always traveling in and out. Alright, brothers and sisters are already traveling in and out. We travel, we traverse the planet. Alright, and I want to show one thing real quick, man. I was going to do the video in this, but I said, no, I'll chop that. I want to show one thing real quick, man. This is really getting on my nerves, man. It really is, because we have to understand is that so-called black people are aboriginal to this planet. Alright? We're aboriginal to this planet. Now I done showed this, but I showed volume 2 to this book. I don't think I showed volume 1. Volume 2 to this book. Alright? Now I'm gonna show you something that you really need to see. If I can pull it up. Because this is the point now. We at a point now, man, that if you do not, there's no excuse not knowing this stuff. There's no excuse not knowing this information, because this information is right in front of your face, and it's been basically handed to you in so many instances. But some of our people refuse to do the studying. Some of our people refuse to do the reading. They want to just believe that they're slaves from Africa, and then you bring something up, and you'll start hollering and yelling and acting goofy, And it had this deep form of self-hatred because, well, you hate yourself. You don't want to identify as African. You anti-African. Nobody anti-nothing, man. Only person anti is your dumb ass because you want to continue to think that you was a slave. And this is really bothersome. You know, it's truly bothersome because we don't have time for pseudo BS. All right, excuse me, man, my throat, man. I need to drink some more water. But we don't have time for pseudo BS, man. Okay, the information's there, but you got to research it. That's why I always give you my books, man. My sources. I give it to you straight up, man. I don't play games with this. I'll give you sources, all right? Because this is stuff that you really need. You need this information about our history and our people. I give you sources for you to go read up for yourself and for you to gain this knowledge. Because let me tell you something now, man. I like I said, I have educators in my family, but I still made the time and effort to really research this information, and it's not easy, but I'm telling you right now, when you do it, once you do it, it's really rewarding, and it's beautiful. Now, I want you to look at this sister and tell me why I can find her. All right, this is ancient Samoa. She look like Kiki Palmer. All right, this is in the book when the world was black. Ancient Samoa. And here's a little black family from Samoa. It tells you that these people were originally black people. I said it before. Melanesian, Micronesian, Polynesian islands. From Kiki Palmer. Melanesian, Micronesian, Polynesian islands. Alright. Melanesian means black. Okay, it doesn't mean mestizo. It means black. Polynesian means many. Micro, as a microchip, means small. These are names that Europeans had given them, man. These people were originally black. So you had those black people there, and then you had the black people who ruled Russia, who ruled Europe. You had the black people who ruled Europe, Russia, and Italy. Remember, I said before, and I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but I said before how the ancient Egyptians were black. That's not enough for debate, man. The Greeks were black, and the freaking Romans were black, and that pissed a lot of these people off, man. Both the Eastern and Western Roman Empire were Negroes, man, because they come from the Etruscans, nothing but a bunch of Egyptians themselves. So it's sad. These white folks aren't indigenous to anything. So we gotta. It's some of our people who wants to go around and still say that they're slaves from Africa, or we're taking other people's history when other people have stolen our history. And this, I really feel, is part of the reason a lot of these white folks hate us, or they're totally against reparations and stuff, because some of them do know that we are the original people here throughout the Americas. I mean, that one senator, I believe it was a senator in one of the southern states, Louisiana, Georgia, when he slipped up and said black people called the Aborigines of America. He slipped up, and some people got mad because basically he knew who the hell we really are. There's a lot of them who do know, and a lot of them do know their true history here, that the original people here were black, and then the original white people came here were slaves. I showed you images before on that. But this main video I want to talk about iron smelting. And then I just showed you a picture of a Samoan girl who looked like Kiki Palmer. Let you know. And I had one of my videos before, I had them idiots come over there getting mad, talking about the original Samoans weren't black and all that stuff. You had a bunch of mulattoes on there coming up there, man. A bunch of mixed breeds coming up there and attacking me in my video, man. Obviously, they taking a culture that comes from a people who they can't stand. Alright? They can't stand. It's not all, but too many of them are like that. But we are indigenous to this planet. You have to understand that. Like I said, this video, I got off a little bit of it, but the iron smelting is very important to study, because it sort of plugging them holes. And how did they carve into this rock? They had one substance that they used was iron steel. They used that. But see, you're taught that, modern day iron and steel did not come from these little simple-minded Negroes. These weren't simple-minded Negroes. These were advanced brothers and sisters, man. These were advanced technological Negroes. And this is something we're going to really have to study even more on how these brothers and sisters built these structures, what material of tools that they use. And iron, steel was one of them that they use. And this was no simple task, because you got to remember, a lot of structures are high up in the air. So they had to climb up, and they carved into the rock. Remember, they had to climb up. They had to climb up and carve into that rock. That is an amazement in itself. That is not simple form of technology. That's a high level of skilled masonry, ancient masonry type of work. And this is what we're going to have to really study more, man. This is our history. Our history does not start in this country, in the bottom of the ship, being taken from the West Africa. Any Negro who still pushes that is an idiot. I'm being kind when I say that. Any Negro who still pushes that method, that ideology, is an idiot. Like I said, I'm kind when I say this. I'm being kind. Alright, brothers and sisters, man. This is Brother G World, man. Video I'm just finishing up. But, yeah. Right here. The culture and technology of African iron production. Volume 1. When the world was black, the untold history of the world's first civilizations. He also talked about the Jomon culture in Japan. So this is just something that is just a good reference material. Alright. And he shows you images of the Jomon that I knew, who was obviously Negro people, but this is just a good reference tool. Also check out your encyclopedias, any form of, I have the Compton set from the late 60s and the mid 90s. So, but continue to do your own research. Do not listen to these mostly Negro scholars, because they're going to have you chasing the tail that it's not there, that you cannot find. Alright? They believe that all black people just come from one area. No matter all the documentation showing that black people who ruled Europe, Europe is named after a black goddess, Europa. Black people rule all of Asia. Black people, all of the land of Asa. Black people ruled all the Americas. Tamaru, or Tamaray, the Amaru. We ruled all the Americas, and we ruled throughout all the Pacific Islands. And this is something that we should really study and be proud of. That is our true history, not Kuta Kinte. And it's being bombarded. We've been bombarded with that mess, starting when we come out of the womb of our mothers, and when we hit the kindergarten, and to first grade to all the way through college. You're taught that you're a slave from Africa. And then you got these little bogus ass different study departments, man. Whatever, man. But I'm going to finish up, because my thing might go out on me, and I don't want to go out on me. Peace and love, brothers and sisters. All right.